German Shepherd. Was hanging from a weak rope bridge. What the baby did next. Left everyone in tears. What happened that stormy night in Pine Hollow will shock you. The story you're about to listen to shows how a 5-year-old boy's courage saved not just one life, but revealed a truth that changed everything. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. The rain hammered against the windows of the small mountain house like angry fists. Lightning split the sky every few seconds, turning the darkness into brief, terrifying snapshots of a world gone wild. In Pine Hollow, storms like this came maybe twice a year, and when they did, everyone knew to stay inside and to wait it out. But 5-year-old Alex wasn't like everyone else. He stood pressed against the living room window, his small hands making fog prints on the cold glass. His dark hair stuck up in every direction from sleep, and he still wore his dinosaur pajamas. Outside, the wind howled through the trees like something alive and furious. "The bridge is crying," Alex whispered, his breath making another cloud on the window. His father, Marcus, looked up from his phone where he'd been checking weather alerts. "What's that, buddy?" "The bridge. It's making sad sounds." Marcus barely glanced toward the window. The old rope bridge over Raven Gorge had been making all kinds of sounds for years. The town kept saying they'd fix it, but there was never enough money. It was probably just the wind catching the cables wrong. "It's just the storm, Alex. Come away from there." But Alex didn't move. His mother, Sophia, came down the stairs wrapping a robe around herself. She'd been trying to sleep despite the noise, but the thunder kept getting louder. "Power's still on," she said, checking the lights. "That's something." Another flash of lightning lit up the world outside, and this time Alex gasped. For just that split second, he saw something that made his heart stop. The bridge, usually straight and steady across the gorge, was twisted. One of the wooden planks hung loose, swinging in the wind. And there, tangled in the ropes and slats, was a dark shape that looked like... "Daddy, there's a dog!" Marcus set down his phone. "Alex, there's no dog out there. It's the middle of the night in a storm." "There is! He's hanging! He's stuck!" Sophia moved to the window, ready to redirect Alex back to bed. But as she looked out, another lightning flash came, longer this time, and she saw it too. "Oh my God, Marcus! There's actually something there!" Marcus joined them at the window just as the next flash came. There, caught in the twisted ropes of the old bridge, a German Shepherd hung, suspended over the rushing water of Raven Gorge. The dog's front paws scraped desperately at the wooden planks, while his leash had somehow gotten wrapped around the bridge supports. Every few seconds, the animal would slip a little lower. "Jesus," Marcus breathed. "How did it even get there?" Alex was already moving, pulling on his small rain boots. "He's saying please." "What?" Sophia knelt down to Alex's level. "The dog. He's saying please with his eyes. I can see it." Sophia and Marcus exchanged a look. Their son had always been sensitive to animals, but this was different. Alex's eyes were bright with certainty, and he was moving with purpose she'd never seen before. "We have to call someone," Sophia said. "Search and rescue or... Mama, they'll be too late." Alex's voice was calm but firm. "I can feel his chest burning. He can't breathe right." Marcus stared at his son. How could a 5-year-old know that? But when he looked back at the bridge, he could see the dog's struggles were getting weaker. "The wind's getting worse," Marcus said, checking his phone. "Weather service says it'll peak in the next hour." "We can't just watch," Alex said simply. He walked to the closet and started pulling out his father's work gloves. "We need ropes and towels." Sophia felt something cold run down her spine. Not fear exactly, but recognition. Alex wasn't acting like a child anymore. He was moving like someone who knew exactly what needed to be done. "Alex, honey, this is dangerous. The bridge could collapse." "It won't if we're fast." Alex looked up at his parents with eyes that seemed older than his 5 years. "Please, he's asking us to help." Marcus found himself reaching for the emergency kit they kept in the hall closet. Rope, headlamps, first aid supplies. His hands moved without his brain fully deciding. 10 minutes, he heard himself say. "We go out there, we assess the situation, and if it's too dangerous, we come right back." Sophia wanted to argue, but something in Alex's face stopped her. The boy was already wrapping a soft blue scarf around his neck, the one his grandmother had made him last Christmas. "For luck," Alex said when he saw his mother looking. "And so, he knows we're friends." They gathered what they needed quickly. Marcus grabbed his climbing gear from the garage, the stuff he used for weekend rock climbing. Sophia filled a thermos with warm water and grabbed old towels. Alex stood by the door, patient as stone, his small face serious. "You stay right beside us," Marcus told him as they headed out into the storm. "No matter what happens, you don't go near that bridge unless we say." Alex nodded, but something in his eyes suggested he was already planning something his parents wouldn't like. The walk to the bridge took only 5 minutes, but the wind fought them every step. Rain stung their faces, and the headlamps made crazy shadows dance in the darkness. When they reached the edge of Raven Gorge, the sound of rushing water mixed with the howling wind to create something that sounded almost alive. And there, 30 feet out over the churning water, the German Shepherd hung in a tangle of rope and leather. Up close, it was worse than they had thought. The dog was bigger than Marcus had expected, probably 80 pounds or more. His leash had somehow gotten wound around 2 of the bridge supports, creating a twisted mess that held him suspended, but was slowly strangling him. Every time he struggled, the knot pulled tighter. "Oh, sweet boy," Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. The dog heard her, his head turned toward them, and even in the dancing light of their headlamps, they could see his eyes, dark, intelligent, desperate, but not panicked anymore, as if he understood that help had arrived. Marcus clipped a safety line to the bridge anchor and tested it. The whole structure groaned under the pressure of the wind. "This thing's not going to hold much longer," he called over the storm. "If I can get out there, maybe I can cut him loose." He took 2 steps onto the first plank. The bridge swayed sickeningly, and one of the support cables made a sound like a guitar string about to snap. "Marcus, stop!" Sophia grabbed his arm. That's when they heard it, a sharp crack like a branch breaking. But it wasn't a branch. One of the main support cables had just given way. The bridge twisted further, and the dog slipped another few inches lower. Marcus backed off quickly. "I can't reach him. The weight of both of us would bring the whole thing down." They stared at the impossible situation. The dog needed someone lighter, someone who could distribute their weight differently. But there was no one else. That's when Alex spoke up. "Daddy, what about your little rope?" "What little rope, buddy?" Alex pointed to Marcus's climbing bag. "The skinny one you use when you go up the rocks." Marcus looked where Alex was pointing. There, in the side pocket of his gear bag, was his emergency climbing harness, the small one. The one he'd bought thinking maybe someday Alex would want to try rock climbing. It was rated for a child's weight. It was short enough that it might fit under the dog's chest. And Alex was light enough that he wouldn't add dangerous stress to the failing bridge. "No," Sophia said immediately, reading Marcus's face. "Absolutely not." But Alex was already walking toward the bridge, not onto it, just to the edge. He pulled the blue scarf from around his neck and held it out toward the dog. "Hey, boy," Alex called softly. "Look what I have." The German Shepherd's struggles stopped. He lifted his head and sniffed the air, somehow catching the scent of the scarf even through the storm. His tail, which had been tucked tight against his body, gave one small wag. "See?" Alex looked back at his parents. "He trusts me." Marcus felt something break apart inside his chest. Not fear exactly. Something deeper. The recognition that his 5-year-old son was braver than he was. "If we do this," Marcus said slowly, "you don't move without me saying. You don't breathe without me saying. Understand?" Alex nodded, solemnly. Sophia's hands were shaking as she helped Alex into the small harness. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for this moment. Marcus attached his strongest safety line to Alex's harness and then to his own climbing rig. "I'll anchor from this end," Marcus explained, his voice tight with concentration. "You belly crawl out to where you can reach him. You slide that scarf through the harness loop so I can pull a proper sling under his chest. The second I say back up, you move. No arguments." "What if he bites me?" Alex asked. Sophia's heart stopped, but Alex was already shaking his head. "He won't bite. He's scared, not mean." And then Alex did something that made both his parents' eyes fill with tears. He got down on his stomach and began to inch out onto the first plank of the bridge, sliding the blue scarf along the wooden deck in front of him. "Easy, boy," Alex called to the dog. "I'm coming to help." The German Shepherd watched Alex approach, and something incredible happened. The dog stopped struggling completely. He hung still in his tangle of ropes, his dark eyes fixed on the small boy crawling toward him, as if he understood that any movement might send them both into the gorge. Alex moved with a patience that seemed impossible for a 5-year-old. Each movement was deliberate, careful. When he reached the spot where he could almost touch the dog, he stopped. "Hi," Alex whispered. "What's your name?" The dog made a small sound, almost like an answer. Alex worked the blue scarf through the small harness loop, just like his father had shown him. His small fingers were cold and wet, but steady. When he had it threaded properly, he called back to Marcus. "Ready, Daddy." Marcus began the delicate process of working a proper rescue sling under the dog's chest, using Alex's scarf as a guide. The dog seemed to understand what was happening, and even helped by lifting his front legs slightly when Marcus tugged the rope. By now, lights were appearing on the hill above the gorge. Other neighbors, awakened by the storm or the commotion, had come to see what was happening. Some had phones out, recording, but Alex didn't notice any of that. His whole world had narrowed to the frightened animal in front of him. "Got it," Marcus called. "Alex, back up slowly." But as Alex began to inch backward, the dog did something unexpected. He stretched his neck forward and gently nuzzled Alex's outstretched hand. Just once, like a thank you. That's when the crowd of neighbors gathering at the overlook started to cry. Someone's phone was recording the whole thing, and even through the rain and wind, you could see the moment when the big German Shepherd pressed his nose against the little boy's palm. Working together, Marcus and Sophia managed to haul the dog up from his terrible position. The animal was heavier than they'd expected, and Marcus's arms burned with the effort, but finally, they had him on solid ground. The German Shepherd immediately collapsed, vomiting up water and shaking from cold and exhaustion. But the first thing he did after catching his breath was crawl over to Alex and lay his massive head in the boy's lap. "He's okay," Alex said, stroking the dog's wet fur. "He just needed someone to believe in him." Sophia wrapped her arms around both Alex and the dog, not caring that they were all soaked and muddy. Marcus stood over them, his hands still shaking from adrenaline, watching his 5-year-old son whisper reassurances to an animal that should have been a stranger, but somehow wasn't. "We need to get him to Dr. Martinez," Sophia said. "He might be hurt internally." As they helped the dog to his feet, Marcus noticed something that made his stomach turn. Along the animal's ribs, barely visible under the matted fur, were old scars, thin, parallel lines that looked like they'd been made by a whip. But that wasn't the worst part. As they loaded the dog into their car, Marcus saw something that made him go cold. Around the dog's neck, mostly hidden by his thick fur, was a collar with a small metal tag. But it wasn't a normal dog tag with a name and phone number. It was a microchip scanner tag, the kind used by professional kennels, and printed on it in small letters were the words, "Property of Crane Holdings." Marcus had heard that name before. Crane Holdings was owned by Robert Crane, one of the wealthiest men in the county. He donated to everything, the police department, the fire department, even the local hospital. His name was on half the buildings in town, but Marcus had also heard other things about Robert Crane. Rumors mostly. Stories about what he did with the animals on his property. Stories that people whispered and then quickly changed the subject. As they drove through the storm toward Dr. Martinez's veterinary clinic, the German Shepherd kept his head on Alex's lap, finally safe. Alex stroked his fur gently, humming a little song his grandmother used to sing. "What are we going to call him?" Alex asked. "We're not keeping him, sweetheart," Sophia said gently. "He belongs to someone." But even as she said it, she was looking at those scars on the dog's ribs. And she was thinking about the way he'd pressed against Alex, like he'd been waiting his whole life for someone to be kind to him. "We'll see," Marcus said quietly, catching Sophia's eyes in the rearview mirror. "We'll see what Dr. Martinez says." None of them knew that, by morning, their quiet life in Pine Hollow would be turned upside down. They didn't know that the man who owned this dog was already making phone calls, or that helping this animal would put them all in danger. All they knew was that sometimes, when the storm is worst and everything seems hopeless, a 5-year-old boy with a blue scarf can make all the difference in the world. The dog seemed to know it too. As they pulled into the clinic parking lot, he lifted his head and looked directly at Alex with those dark, intelligent eyes. And for just a moment, it looked like he was trying to tell the boy something important. Something like, "Thank you for saving me. Now I need to save you." Dr. Martinez's clinic sat on the edge of town, a converted house with large windows and a sign that had been repainted so many times the letters looked thick and uneven. Even at 2 in the morning, she'd agreed to meet them there. That's the kind of person Dr. Martinez was. She opened the door before they even knocked, her gray hair pulled back in a messy bun, and her clothes clearly thrown on in a hurry. But her eyes were alert and focused. "Bring him straight back," she said, leading them through the waiting room toward the examination area. The German Shepherd walked slowly, still weak but determined to stay close to Alex. His tail hung low, but every few steps he would glance up at the boy, as if checking that Alex was still there. "How long was he hanging?" Dr. Martinez asked, as she lifted the dog onto the examination table. "We don't know," Marcus said. "Could have been hours." "He's lucky to be alive." Dr. Martinez's hands moved expertly over the dog's body, checking for injuries. "Hypothermia, definitely. Some muscle strain, but his heart sounds strong." Alex stood on his tiptoes, trying to see over the edge of the table. "Is he going to be okay?" "He's going to be fine, thanks to you." Dr. Martinez smiled at Alex, then her expression grew more serious as she continued her examination. "But there are some things here that concern me." She gently parted the fur along the dog's ribs. The scars Marcus had noticed in the car were more visible now under the bright clinic lights. They weren't random scratches or accidents. They were deliberate, parallel marks that could only have been made by a whip or similar tool. "These are old," Dr. Martinez said quietly. "Maybe 6 months to a year. They've healed, but—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Sophia felt her stomach turn. Someone hurt him on purpose. It looks that way. Dr. Martinez moved to check the dog's legs and paws. He's also undernourished, not starving, but he hasn't been getting enough food for a while. His coat should be much thicker for this breed. As she worked, the German Shepherd remained perfectly still. He seemed to understand that Dr. Martinez was trying to help him, but his eyes never left Alex, who had somehow managed to climb onto a chair so he could be closer. "What about the collar?" Marcus asked. Dr. Martinez had been avoiding the collar, but now she carefully examined it. The metal tag was small but clearly visible. "Property of Crane Holdings," with a number beneath it. "Crane Holdings," she repeated, and something in her voice changed. "I was afraid of that." "You know them?" Dr. Martinez was quiet for a long moment, still examining the dog. "Robert Crane owns a lot of property outside town, claims he runs a legitimate breeding operation. But I've seen too. Many animals come through here with similar conditions." "Similar scars, you mean?" "Among other things." Dr. Martinez looked directly at Marcus and Sophia. "Listen to me carefully. If this dog really belongs to Robert Crane, you're going to get a visit, probably tomorrow. He doesn't like losing his assets." "His assets?" Sophia couldn't keep the anger out of her voice. "That's how he sees them, not as animals, not as pets, as property that generates income." Dr. Martinez finished her examination and gently helped the dog down from the table. "I can keep him here tonight for observation, but that won't stop Crane from coming for him." Alex had been quiet during most of this conversation, but now he spoke up. "He doesn't want to go back there." The adults looked at him. "How do you know that, sweetheart?" Sophia asked. "Because he told me. Not with words, but—" Alex struggled to explain. "When I was on the bridge, I could feel what he was feeling. He wasn't just scared of falling. He was scared of something else, something worse." Dr. Martinez knelt down to Alex's level. "You have good instincts, young man. Animals communicate in ways most adults have forgotten how to hear." She stood up and looked at Marcus and Sophia. "I can hold him here on medical grounds for maybe 24 hours. After that, legally, I have to release him to whoever has proof of ownership. And Crane has that proof. The microchip makes it pretty clear." Dr. Martinez hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "But there might be other options, if you're willing to take some risks." Before she could explain what she meant, the front door of the clinic chimed. They all froze. It was nearly 3 in the morning. Who else would be coming to a veterinary clinic at this hour? Dr. Martinez moved quietly to the front window and peered through the blinds. "It's just Mrs. Chen with her cat. Emergency, probably." She relaxed slightly. "But this gives you an idea of how quickly word travels in a town this small. By morning, everyone will know about the rescue. As Dr. Martinez went to help Mrs. Chen, the family sat in the examination room with the German Shepherd. The dog had settled on the floor next to Alex's chair, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes alert. "What do you think she meant about other options?" Sophia asked quietly. Marcus shook his head. "I don't know, but I don't like the sound of it." Alex slid down from his chair and sat on the floor next to the dog. The animal immediately moved closer, pressing his warm side against Alex's leg. "He's not going back there," Alex said, with the kind of certainty that only children possess. "We won't let him." "Alex, it might not be that simple. If Mr. Crane owns him legally, then the law is wrong." Alex looked up at his parents with those serious eyes again. "Sometimes grown-ups make rules that aren't good for everyone. Grandma told me that." Sophia and Marcus exchanged a look. Alex's grandmother had been a civil rights activist in the 1960s. She'd taught Alex stories about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Dr. Martinez returned after helping Mrs. Chen, and she looked more worried than before. "Mrs. Chen saw the whole rescue," she said. "She was one of the neighbors who came out to watch. She said someone was recording it on their phone." "Is that bad?" Alex asked. "It might be. If that video gets shared online, Robert Crane will know exactly who rescued his dog, and he'll know where to find you." As if summoned by her words, Dr. Martinez's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, and her face went pale. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "Text message from an unknown number. It says, 'I believe you have something that belongs to me. I'll be by in the morning to collect it.'" The room went very quiet. Outside, they could hear the storm starting to calm, but inside the clinic, the tension was building. "That was fast," Sophia said. "Too fast." Dr. Martinez was thinking hard. Robert Crane has resources, people who work for him, keep track of things. If he already knows the dog is here, then he knew the dog was missing before we even found him, Marcus finished. Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. "Which means this wasn't an accident. Dogs don't just end up tangled on rope bridges in the middle of storms. Someone put him there." The implications hit them all at once. This hadn't been a rescue. It had been a trap. But a trap for what? For whom? Alex seemed to understand before the adults did. He looked up at Dr. Martinez with those wise eyes and asked, "Was he the bait?" "What do you mean, honey? The dog, was someone using him to catch something else?" Dr. Martinez stared at the 5-year-old boy. That's actually a very intelligent question, Alex." She moved to her computer and pulled up some files. "I've been keeping records of the animals that come through here with suspicious injuries. Most of them have one thing in common. They all belong to properties owned by Robert Crane or his associates." She clicked through several photos. Dogs mostly, but some cats and even a few horses, all showing signs of abuse or neglect. The thing is, none of the owners ever reported these animals as missing. They just disappeared from their properties. And then they'd turn up days later, injured and traumatized. "Like they were being used for something," Sophia said. "That's what I think, but I've never been able to prove it." Dr. Martinez closed the files. "What I can tell you is that Robert Crane doesn't just breed dogs. He has other interests, things that require animals trained for specific purposes." Marcus felt cold. "What kind of purposes?" "The kind that are illegal in most states, but very profitable." Alex was still sitting on the floor with the German Shepherd, stroking the dog's fur gently. But he was listening to every word. "So, when he comes tomorrow," Alex said, "he's not just coming for the dog." "What do you mean?" Dr. Martinez asked. "He's coming to see if we know anything, if we figured out his secret." The adults stared at Alex. The boy was right. If Crane suspected they knew more than they should about his operations, he wouldn't just take the dog and leave. He'd want to know how much they'd discovered. "We need to be very careful about what we say tomorrow," Dr. Martinez warned. "Robert Crane is not just wealthy. He's connected. He has friends in the police department, the mayor's office, even the county courthouse." "Are you saying he's above the law?" "I'm saying he influences the people who enforce the law. There's a difference, but the result is the same." Sophia looked at her son, still sitting calmly with the injured dog. "Maybe we should take Alex somewhere else tomorrow, to my mother's house, or—" "No," Alex said firmly. "I need to be here. Alex, this could be dangerous." It's already dangerous, for him. Alex gestured to the German Shepherd. And for other animals. If we run away, nothing changes. Marcus knelt down beside his son. Alex, you're 5 years old. This isn't your responsibility. But I'm the one who saved him. That makes it my responsibility. Dr. Martinez watched this exchange with growing amazement. Has he always been like this? Like what? Sophia asked. Like he's older than his years. Like he sees things the rest of us miss. Sophia and Marcus had to admit that, yes, Alex had always been different. More sensitive, more aware, more willing to stand up for what he believed was right. The question is, Dr. Martinez continued, what do we do when Crane shows up tomorrow? They spent the next hour discussing options. They could transfer the dog to another clinic, but Crane would just track him down. They could contact the police, but Dr. Martinez warned them that several officers received donations from Crane Holdings. Finally, Alex spoke up again. What if we make him tell the truth? How do you mean? Bad people lie because they think no one is watching. But if everyone is watching... Alex couldn't quite articulate his idea, but the adults began to understand. The video of the rescue had probably already been shared online. People in town were talking. If they handled Crane's visit carefully, they might be able to expose his operation rather than just hide from it. It's risky, Dr. Martinez said. If we're wrong, or if we can't prove anything, then we'll be exactly where we are now, Marcus said. Except we'll have tried. Sophia looked at her son, who was now lying on the floor with his arm around the German Shepherd. Both of them looked peaceful, like they'd found exactly where they belonged. What do you think, Alex? Are you sure about this? Alex didn't answer right away. He seemed to be listening to something only he could hear. Finally, he nodded. He wants to help too. He's tired of being scared. Dr. Martinez made the decision. All right, we'll do this together, but we need to be smart about it, and we need to be ready for anything. As dawn approached, they worked out a plan. It wasn't complicated, but it would require timing, courage, and a lot of luck. Most importantly, it would require Alex to be braver than any 5-year-old should have to be. But, looking at the boy with the German Shepherd doctor, Martinez thought maybe Alex was ready for it. Maybe he'd been ready all along. The dog seemed to think so too. As the first light of morning began to filter through the clinic windows, the German Shepherd lifted his head and looked directly at Alex. And for the second time that night, it looked like he was trying to tell the boy something. This time, it looked like he was saying, I trust you. Let's finish this together. Outside, Pine Hollow was waking up to news of the dramatic rescue. Social media was already buzzing with the video of a 5-year-old boy crawling across a dangerous bridge to save a dog in a storm. The story was spreading faster than anyone had expected, which meant Robert Crane was probably already on his way. Alex didn't seem worried, though. He sat with his new friend as the sun came up, both of them calm and ready for whatever came next. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is the right thing. And sometimes a 5-year-old boy and a rescued dog are exactly what the world needs to see the truth. The morning sun had barely cleared the mountains when the black sedan pulled into the clinic parking lot. It was exactly the kind of car you'd expect a wealthy man to drive, expensive, spotless, and intimidating. Through the window, Dr. Martinez watched a tall man in an expensive suit step out, adjusting his tie like he was heading to a business meeting instead of collecting a dog. Robert Crane looked nothing like the monster they'd been imagining all night. He was handsome in a polished way, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He carried himself with the confidence of someone used to getting his way, but his smile seemed genuine as he approached the clinic door. That's him, Doctor, Martinez whispered to Marcus and Sophia, who were sitting in the waiting room with Alex and the German Shepherd. The dog's reaction was immediate and terrifying. The moment he saw Crane through the window, his entire body went rigid. His ears flattened against his head, his tail tucked tight against his body, and a low whine escaped his throat. But he didn't try to hide. Instead, he moved closer to Alex, positioning himself between the boy and the door. Easy, boy, Alex whispered, stroking the dog's fur. We're not going to let him hurt you. The bell above the door chimed cheerfully as Robert Crane entered. His smile was warm, and his voice carried just the right amount of concern and gratitude. Dr. Martinez, I presume. I can't thank you enough for taking care of my dog. He glanced around the waiting room, his eyes settling on Alex and his family. "And you must be the heroes I've been hearing about. The whole town is talking about your brave rescue." Sophia felt something cold creep up her spine. There was nothing obviously wrong with what Crane had said, but something about his tone felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced this conversation. "Mr. Crane," Dr. Martinez said carefully, "I wasn't expecting you quite so early." "Well, when I heard about the accident, I had to come right away. Poor Bruno here must have been terrified." Crane took a step toward the German Shepherd, who immediately pressed closer to Alex. "Bruno?" Alex looked up at Crane with those serious eyes. "Is that his name?" "That's right, son. He's been missing from my property for 3 days. I've been worried sick." Crane's smile never wavered, but something flickered behind his eyes. "I don't suppose he told you his name during your heroic rescue?" It was a strange thing to say. Who asks a 5-year-old if a dog told them their name? But Alex answered seriously. "He told me lots of things, just not with words." Crane's smile faltered for just a moment. "Children have such active imaginations, don't they?" Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "Mr. Crane, I'm going to need to see some documentation before I can release the animal. Ownership papers, vaccination records, that sort of thing." "Of course." Crane reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "Everything's right here. Bruno is a valuable breeding dog, registered German Shepherd with excellent bloodlines. The microchip should confirm everything." As Dr. Martinez examined the papers, Marcus noticed something. The documents all looked official, but they were dated only 2 weeks ago. For a dog that Crane claimed to have owned for years, that seemed odd. "These registration papers are very recent, Doctor," Martinez observed. "I had to get new copies. The originals were destroyed in a small fire at my office last month. Insurance companies, you know how they are about documentation." It was a reasonable explanation. Too reasonable. Like Crane had anticipated the question. Alex had been quiet during this exchange, but now he stood up and walked directly to Robert Crane. The German Shepherd followed, staying close to the boy's side. "Why was he on the bridge?" Alex asked. Crane looked down at the small boy, and for the first time, his composure seemed to crack slightly. "I'm sorry? Bruno? Why was he on the bridge in the storm? Dogs don't usually go there by themselves." "Children ask the most interesting questions," Crane said, glancing at Marcus and Sophia. "I'm afraid I don't know how Bruno ended up there. He must have gotten loose during the storm and wandered off. Dogs can be unpredictable when they're frightened." Alex tilted his head, studying Crane's face with an intensity that made the adults uncomfortable. He wasn't lost. Someone put him there. The room went very quiet. Crane's smile became strained. "That's quite an imagination you have, young man. But sometimes the simplest explanation is the right one. Bruno got loose, he wandered onto the bridge, and he got stuck. Thank goodness you were there to save him. But his leash was tangled in a special way," Alex continued, his voice still calm and serious. "Like someone knew how to tie knots that would hold but not break. And he wasn't scared of falling. He was scared of something else." Marcus felt his heart start to race. Alex was pushing too hard, too fast. But the boy seemed to know exactly what he was doing. Crane's friendly mask was starting to slip. "Son, I think you might be confused about what you saw. It was dark, you were scared, and storms can make everything seem different than it really is." "I wasn't scared," Alex said simply, "and I see very well in the dark." Dr. Martinez decided to intervene before things escalated further. "Mr. Crane, everything appears to be in order, but I'd like to keep Bruno for one more day of observation. He was severely dehydrated and I want to make sure there are no complications." "I'm afraid that won't be possible." Crane's voice hardened slightly. "I need Bruno back today. I have commitments. People who are expecting him." "What kind of commitments?" Alex asked. Crane stared down at the boy, and for a moment, his mask slipped completely. The kind eyes became calculating, the warm smile turned cold. "The kind that aren't any concern of yours, child." The German Shepherd sensed the change in Crane's demeanor immediately. He stepped fully in front of Alex, his body tense and ready. A low growl rumbled in his chest. "Interesting," Crane said, watching the dog's reaction. "Bruno doesn't usually act protective. He's been trained to be more compliant." Dr. Martinez caught the word choice. "Trained how?" Crane seemed to realize he'd said too much. His practiced smile returned, but it looked forced now. Standard obedience training, of course. Bruno is a working dog. He needs to follow commands reliably. Alex knelt down and put his arms around the German Shepherd's neck. What kind of work does he do? Various things. Breeding, security, entertainment. Entertainment? Sophia couldn't keep the suspicion out of her voice. Private events, demonstrations of training techniques, that sort of thing. But as Crane spoke, the German Shepherd's growling intensified. The dog was staring directly at Crane with what could only be described as hatred. "He doesn't want to go with you," Alex observed. "Dogs don't always know what's best for them," Crane replied coldly. "That's why they need masters." The word masters hung in the air like a threat. Dr. Martinez felt all her suspicions crystallizing into certainty. "Mr. Crane, I'm going to need more time to complete my examination. State law requires—" "State law?" Crane interrupted. "Also recognizes property rights. Bruno belongs to me, and I'm taking him today." He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Yes, it's me. I'm at the veterinary clinic on Maple Street. I need you here in 10 minutes. He hung up and smiled at the room, but there was no warmth in it anymore. "I've called my associate. He'll help me collect Bruno and ensure there are no further misunderstandings." Marcus moved closer to his family. What kind of associate? Someone who understands the value of cooperation. The threat was clear now. Crane wasn't just here for the dog. He was here to send a message about what happened to people who interfered with his business. Alex stood up slowly, his hand still resting on the German Shepherd's head. "Dr. Martinez, may I use your computer?" "Alex, this isn't the time." Sophia started. "Actually, it's exactly the time." Alex looked at Crane with those two old eyes. "Mr. Crane, would you like to see something interesting?" Before anyone could stop him, Alex walked to Dr. Martinez's computer and clicked on the browser. He navigated to a social media site with the confidence of someone much older. "The video of the rescue," Alex said, turning the screen so everyone could see. "It's been shared 50,000 times since last night." Crane's face went pale as he watched the footage. There was Alex, crawling across the dangerous bridge. There was the German Shepherd, tangled in the ropes exactly as they'd found him. And there, visible in the stormlights, was something none of them had noticed before. The way the dog's leash was wrapped around the bridge supports wasn't random. It was deliberate, methodical. The work of someone who knew exactly how to position an animal so it would be visible from the road but unable to escape. 50,000 people, Alex said quietly, have now seen exactly how Bruno was tied to that bridge. A lot of them are asking the same questions I asked, like, how does a leash get wrapped that way by accident? Crane's composure finally cracked completely. "You little—" He stopped himself, but not before everyone in the room heard the venom in his voice. "That's quite enough, Doctor," Martinez said firmly. "Mr. Crane, I think you should leave. Now. I'm not leaving without my property." "Your property," Alex said, still standing calmly by the computer, "seems to have his own opinion about that." The German Shepherd had positioned himself between Crane and Alex, his body language making it clear that he would not allow Crane to get closer to the boy. "Bruno, heel!" Crane commanded sharply. The dog didn't move. "I said heel!" Still nothing. If anything, the German Shepherd seemed to grow larger, more imposing. Crane's face flushed red. That dog has been trained to obey commands. He knows what happens when he doesn't. "What happens?" Alex asked innocently. Crane caught himself again, but he'd already revealed too much. The scars on the dog's ribs suddenly made perfect sense to everyone in the room. That's when they heard a car door slam outside. Crane's associate had arrived. Through the window, they could see a large man in work clothes approaching the clinic. He moved with the purposeful stride of someone used to physical confrontation, and there was something in his hand that glinted metallic in the morning sun. "Dr. Martinez," Sophia said urgently. "Maybe we should call the police." Crane laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Please, go ahead. Ask for Officer Torres, or maybe Sergeant Williams. They're both good friends of mine." The implication was clear. The local police wouldn't help them, but Alex didn't look worried. If anything, he seemed more determined than ever. "Mr. Crane," he said, "do you know what's really interesting about that video?" "What?" "It's not the only one." Alex clicked to another tab on the browser. This one showed a different angle of the rescue, filmed by someone else in the crowd. And this video showed something the first one had missed. In the background, barely visible through the storm, was a figure standing on the hill above the gorge, someone who had been watching the whole rescue from a distance, someone who had left before the crowd arrived. 47,000 shares on this one, Alex said conversationally. And people are starting to ask who that person is in the background, the one who was already there when we arrived. Crane stared at the screen, his face now completely white. You see? Alex continued, his 5-year-old voice carrying an authority that made the adults shiver. I think you put Bruno on that bridge. I think you wanted him to be found, but not by us, by someone else. Someone who wouldn't ask questions. That's ridiculous! Is it? Alex clicked to a third tab. This one showed news articles about other animal rescues in the area. Rescues where the animals had mysteriously disappeared again, within days of being found. 93,000 people, Alex said, are now reading about all the animals that have gone missing after being rescued in this county. They're starting to see a pattern. Crane's associate reached the door, but before he could enter, something unexpected happened. 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot, followed by a news van. I didn't call them, Dr. Martinez said, looking surprised. Alex smiled for the first time since Crane had arrived. I did. Well, not me exactly, but I sent some messages while you were all talking. He had used Dr. Martinez's computer to contact the state police, the local news station, and something called the Animal Welfare Investigation Unit. He'd included links to all the videos and a detailed description of the scars on the German Shepherd. You see, Mr. Crane, Alex said as the authorities began approaching the clinic, the thing about the internet is that once something goes viral, everyone gets to see it, including people who know how to ask the right questions. Robert Crane looked around the room, trapped between a 5-year-old boy, a protective German Shepherd, and the approaching investigators. His carefully constructed world was crumbling, and it had taken less than 12 hours. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, it is, Alex replied with the calm certainty of someone much older. Because Bruno doesn't belong to you anymore. He belongs to himself. And he chooses us. As if to confirm Alex's words, the German Shepherd walked over to the boy and sat down beside him, his tail wagging for the first time since they'd met him. Outside, they could hear the investigators approaching. Inside, Robert Crane's empire was about to come crashing down, brought low by a 5-year-old boy who refused to accept that might makes right. And it all started with a dog hanging from a bridge, waiting for someone brave enough to save him. The state investigators weren't what anyone expected. Instead of the serious, intimidating officers they had imagined, 2 women in casual clothes walked into the clinic. The older one had kind eyes and moved with the gentle confidence of someone who worked with traumatized animals every day. The younger one carried a tablet and seemed to be documenting everything. I'm Detective Sarah Chen with the Animal Welfare Investigation Unit, the older woman said, showing her badge. This is Officer Lisa Park. We received some very interesting information about this case. Robert Crane's associate had stopped at the door when he saw the official vehicles, but he hadn't left. He stood just outside, speaking quietly into his phone, his eyes never leaving the clinic windows. There seems to be some confusion here, Crane said, his practiced smile returning as he tried to regain control of the situation. I'm simply here to collect my dog, who was rescued by these good people last night. Detective Chen looked around the room, taking in the family huddled together, the veterinarian who seemed relieved to see her, and the 5-year-old boy standing calmly next to a German Shepherd who was clearly agitated by Crane's presence. Mr. Crane, I presume? We've heard quite a lot about you. All good things, I hope. That remains to be seen. Detective Chen knelt down to Alex's level. You must be the young man who crawled across that bridge. That was very brave. I wasn't brave, Alex said matter-of-factly. I was just doing what needed to be done. Detective Chen smiled. Sometimes that's the same thing. Can you tell me what you observed about the dog when you found him? Alex looked up at his parents, who nodded encouragingly. He was tangled up, but not like he got tangled by accident. Someone had wrapped his leash around the bridge supports in a special way. And he wasn't just scared of falling, he was scared of going back somewhere. Back where? Alex pointed at Robert Crane. Back to him. Detective Chen stood up and looked at Crane with new interest. Mr. Crane, we'd like to ask you a few questions about your breeding operation. I'm happy to cooperate, of course. But first, I really do need to collect my property. I have clients waiting. What kind of clients? Crane hesitated for just a moment. Dog enthusiasts, people who appreciate quality breeding. Officer Park looked up from her tablet. According to the videos posted online, this animal shows signs of systematic abuse, fresh scars, malnourishment, and clear behavioral indicators of trauma. I'm afraid you're mistaken. Bruno is a perfectly healthy, well-cared-for animal. Bruno? Detective Chen looked at Dr. Martinez. Is that the name on his identification? Dr. Martinez checked the collar. The microchip just says property of Crane Holdings with a serial number. No name listed. Interesting. Mr. Crane, how long have you owned this particular dog? Several years. He's one of my best breeding males. Alex spoke up again. If he's been yours for several years, why doesn't he know his name? Everyone looked at the boy, then at the German Shepherd. Crane had called the dog Bruno multiple times, but the animal had shown no recognition of the name whatsoever. Dogs can be selective about when they respond, Crane said weakly. Try calling him, Alex suggested. I'm sorry? Call his name. If he's really your dog, he should come when you call him. It was such a simple test that everyone felt foolish for not thinking of it sooner. Crane looked around the room, clearly uncomfortable. Bruno, come here, he said. The German Shepherd didn't even look in his direction. Bruno, heel, nothing. Sometimes dogs are stubborn when they're in unfamiliar environments, Crane tried to explain. Alex knelt down next to the German Shepherd and whispered something in his ear. The dog's tail started wagging immediately, and he licked Alex's face. What did you say to him? Detective Chen asked. I asked if he wanted to go home with me. The implications hung in the air. This dog, who supposedly belonged to Robert Crane, showed no recognition of his alleged owner, but had bonded immediately with the boy who'd saved him. Detective Chen turned back to Crane. Mr. Crane, we're going to need you to come with us to answer some questions. Am I under arrest? Not yet, but we have some concerns about your operation that need to be addressed. That's when Crane's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. Excuse me, I need to take this. He stepped toward the door, but Detective Chen stopped him. I'm afraid we need you to stay here while we complete our preliminary investigation. Crane's phone kept ringing. Through the window, they could see his associate pacing nervously in the parking lot, also on his phone. Mr. Crane, Officer Park said, we've been in contact with several other counties about similar cases. Animals that disappear and reappear under suspicious circumstances. Your name has come up in several of those investigations. I run a legitimate business. What kind of business exactly? Detective Chen pressed. Breeding, training. I provide animals for various purposes. What purposes? Crane was trapped, and he knew it. Every answer he gave only raised more questions. That's when the power went out. The clinic plunged into darkness, except for the gray morning light filtering through the windows. Everyone froze for a moment, listening. Outside, they could hear engines starting, car doors slamming, and voices calling out commands. That's not a coincidence, Doctor, Martinez said grimly. Detective Chen immediately got on her radio. This is Chen. We need backup at the veterinary clinic on Maple Street. Possible attempt to interfere with an ongoing investigation. But her radio crackled with static and went dead. They're jamming communications, Officer Park said, checking her own radio. Alex moved closer to the German Shepherd, who had become alert and tense again. The dog was staring at the windows, his ears pricked forward like he was listening to something the humans couldn't hear. How many people does Crane have? Marcus asked. We're about to find out, Detective Chen replied, drawing her weapon. Through the front window, they could see figures moving in the parking lot. Too many figures. This wasn't just Crane's one associate anymore. Back door? Detective Chen asked Dr. Martinez. Yes, but it opens onto an alley. Easy to block. They were trapped. Alex knelt down and put his arms around the German Shepherd. It's okay, boy. We're not going to let them take you. But as he spoke, Alex noticed something strange. The dog wasn't just alert. He was focused. His attention kept shifting between the front door and a small storage room at the back of the clinic. Dr. Martinez, Alex said quietly, what's in that room? Just supplies, medical equipment, food, cleaning supplies. Does it have a window? A small one, yes, but it's too high and too small for adults. Alex and the German Shepherd looked at each other, and something passed between them, an understanding. Alex, Sophia said, reading her son's expression, whatever you're thinking, no. They're not here for you, Alex said calmly. They're here for him, and for the evidence. What evidence? Alex pointed to Dr. Martinez's computer, which was still running on battery power. The videos, the records, everything that proves what Mr. Crane has been doing. Detective Chen understood immediately. They're not just here to take the dog. They're here to destroy evidence and silence witnesses. The realization hit everyone at once. This wasn't a simple attempt to reclaim stolen property. This was something much more dangerous. Outside, they could hear footsteps surrounding the building. Crane's phone had finally stopped ringing, and he was standing by the door with a look of grim satisfaction. I tried to do this the easy way, he said. I offered to take Bruno and leave quietly, but you people couldn't let it alone. What people? Alex asked, still stroking the German Shepherd's fur. People who ask too many questions. People who think they can interfere with business that doesn't concern them. Detective Chen kept her weapon trained on Crane. What kind of business, Mr. Crane? What exactly do you do with these animals? Crane's mask was completely gone now. The polished businessman had been replaced by something cold and calculating. I provide entertainment for people with specific tastes, people who appreciate competitions. Dr. Martinez felt sick. Dogfighting. Among other things, there's a surprising market for well-trained animals who know how to put on a good show. You mean animals who've been tortured into submission, Detective Chen said. I mean animals who understand their place in the world. Alex stood up slowly, his hand still resting on the German Shepherd's head. Is that why you put him on the bridge? To test him? Crane looked down at the boy with something that might have been respect. You really are remarkably perceptive for your age. Answer the question. The bridge was a training exercise. Bruno was supposed to be collected by my associates after a predetermined amount of time. It was designed to test his endurance and his ability to remain calm under stress. But we found him instead, Marcus said. Yes, which created complications. Sophia couldn't contain her anger anymore. You left him there to die. I left him there to learn. The storm was unexpected, but it made the exercise more educational. Detective Chen had heard enough. Robert Crane, you're under arrest for animal cruelty, endangering public safety, and... She never finished the sentence. The front door exploded inward as several large men in dark clothing rushed into the clinic. Detective Chen got off one shot before she was overwhelmed. In the chaos that followed, Alex did something that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of cowering or running, he grabbed Dr. Martinez's computer and sprinted toward the storage room, the German Shepherd right beside him. Alex, no! Sophia screamed, but Alex was already through the storage room door, slamming it behind him and turning the lock. Through the thin walls, they could hear him moving around, dragging things in front of the door. What's he doing? One of Crane's men asked. Crane's eyes were fixed on the storage room door. He's uploading the evidence. To where? Everywhere. In the storage room, Alex had indeed connected Dr. Martinez's computer to the clinic's wireless router. But he wasn't just uploading the videos and records they had already collected. He was live streaming. Using the computer's camera, Alex was broadcasting everything happening in the clinic to every social media platform he could access. The confrontation with Crane, the arrival of his men, Detective Chen being overpowered, all of it was going out live to thousands of viewers. Hi everyone, Alex said calmly to the camera, the German Shepherd sitting beside him. My name is Alex, and this is my friend. We need your help. Outside the storage room, Crane was frantically directing his men to break down the door. But it was too late. The live stream was already being shared, copied, and saved by viewers around the world. The man trying to break in here is named Robert Crane, Alex continued, his 5-year-old voice steady and clear. He hurts animals for money. He tried to kill my friend here by leaving him on a bridge in a storm. Now he's trying to stop us from telling people the truth. The German Shepherd seemed to understand what Alex was doing. He moved closer to the camera, showing the scars on his side. See these marks? Mr. Crane did this to him. And he does it to lots of other animals too. On social media, the live stream was exploding. Comments were flooding in, people were sharing the feed, and news outlets were starting to pick up the story. In the main room of the clinic, Crane was watching his carefully constructed world collapse in real time. His phone was buzzing constantly with calls from associates, clients, and lawyers, all demanding to know what was happening. "Get that door open," he ordered his men. But before they could break through, they heard sirens approaching. Lots of sirens. Alex's live stream had reached someone with the ability to help. Within minutes of going live, the feed had been seen by a state police captain, a federal animal welfare investigator, and a local news director. Pine Hollow was about to be flooded with law enforcement and media, all drawn by the courage of a 5-year-old boy and his determination to protect a dog who had chosen to trust him. "Mr. Crane," Alex called through the door, still broadcasting live, "the whole world is watching now. You can't hurt us anymore." Outside, the sirens were getting closer. Crane's men were looking nervous, and Crane himself was starting to realize that this was no longer a situation he could control. The German Shepherd lifted his head and let out a single, clear bark. It wasn't a bark of fear or aggression. It was a bark of triumph. Because sometimes all it takes to bring down evil is one small voice refusing to be silenced, and one brave heart willing to stand up for what's right. Even when that voice belongs to a 5-year-old boy, and that heart beats in the chest of a dog who learned to trust again. The first police car to arrive wasn't from Pine Hollow. It was a state police cruiser, followed quickly by 2 more. But as the officers got out of their vehicles, something became immediately clear. They weren't there to help. Officer Jake Torres, the same man whose social media showed him smiling next to Robert Crane at various charity events, stepped out of the lead car. His hand rested casually on his weapon, but his body language suggested he wasn't planning to arrest anyone in Crane's group. "Well, this is unfortunate," Torres said as he approached the clinic. "Looks like we have a domestic disturbance. False alarm, probably." Detective Chen, who was being held by 2 of Crane's men, couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Officer Torres, I'm Detective Chen with the State Animal Welfare Unit. These men are interfering with an official investigation." Torres barely glanced at her credentials. "I don't see any official investigation here. I see a property dispute that got out of hand." From inside the storage room, Alex was still broadcasting live. His audience had grown to over 50,000 viewers, and the comments section was exploding with outrage as people watched a police officer clearly working with the criminals. "Everyone watching this," Alex said quietly into the camera, "please remember Officer Torres's name. He's supposed to protect people, but he's helping the bad guys instead." The German Shepherd was pressed against Alex's side, both of them listening to the increasingly heated argument in the main room of the clinic. "This is exactly what I was talking about, Doctor," Martinez was saying, her voice carrying clearly through the thin walls. "Crane owns half the police force in this county." "Now, that's not fair, Doc," Torres replied. "Mr. Crane is a respected businessman and a generous supporter of local law enforcement. Sometimes good people get caught up in misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" Sophia's voice was shaking with anger. "They held a gun on us." "I don't see any guns here," Torres said blandly. "Must have been a toy, maybe a water gun. Kids these days, they can look pretty realistic." Detective Chen struggled against the men holding her. "This is being broadcast live online. Thousands of people are watching this conversation." For the first time, Torres looked concerned. What broadcast? Crane's face had gone gray. In all his planning, he hadn't anticipated a 5-year-old boy with a live stream. "The kid's in the back room with a computer," one of Crane's men reported. "He's been broadcasting everything." Torres pulled out his radio. "This is Torres. I need the tech unit to shut down all internet traffic in a 2-block radius around the veterinary clinic on Maple Street." "You can't do that," Dr. Martinez protested. "You don't have authority to—" "Emergency police powers," Torres said smoothly. "Public safety concern." But as Torres made his radio call, something unexpected happened. Alex's live stream didn't go down. Instead, it got stronger. Unknown to everyone in the clinic, Alex's grandmother had been watching the broadcast from her home 3 states away. And Alex's grandmother hadn't spent 40 years as a civil rights activist without learning a few things about emergency communications. Within minutes of seeing her grandson in danger, she had contacted every major news network, civil rights organization, and animal welfare group in the country. She'd also reached out to her old contacts in the federal government, people who had the authority to override local communication. Blackouts. The result was that Alex's live stream was now being rebroadcast by multiple major networks, backed up on dozens of servers, and protected by federal communication laws. "The internet's not going down," Torres's radio crackled. "We're getting interference from federal sources. Someone with high-level authorization is protecting this transmission." Crane's carefully controlled world was collapsing faster than he could patch it together. "Just break down the door and stop the broadcast manually," he ordered his men. But as they approached the storage room, the German Shepherd did something that made everyone freeze. He let out a long, mournful howl that seemed to carry every ounce of pain and suffering he'd endured. The sound was heartbreaking, but it was also something else. It was a signal. From outside the clinic, they heard an answering howl, then another, and another. Dogs throughout Pine Hollow were responding to the German Shepherd's call. But these weren't just any dogs. These were other animals that had escaped from Crane's operation over the years. Animals that had found new homes, but still remembered their trauma. Within minutes, the clinic was surrounded by dozens of dogs with their owners, all of them drawn by some instinct to help one of their own. "What the hell is happening out there?" Crane demanded. Through the windows, they could see the crowd growing. Not just dog owners, but neighbors who had been watching the live stream, people from other towns who had driven over after seeing the broadcast, even some of the teenagers who had recorded the original rescue video. Torres tried to maintain control of the situation, but it was slipping away from him fast. "Everyone needs to disperse immediately. This is police business." "No, it's not," called a voice from the crowd. "It's human business." The voice belonged to Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman whose cat Dr. Martinez had treated the night before. She was holding a tablet showing Alex's live stream, and she was angry. "We've all been watching," she announced to Torres. "We know what this man does to animals. We know you've been protecting him, and we're not leaving until that boy and his dog are safe." Torres looked around at the growing crowd and realized he was vastly outnumbered, but he still had his authority, and he wasn't afraid to use it. "Anyone who doesn't disperse in the next 5 minutes will be arrested for interfering with police business." "On what charges?" called another voice. This voice belonged to someone Torres hadn't expected to see. Judge Patricia Williams from the county courthouse. She was also holding a tablet, also watching the live stream. "Judge Williams," Torres said nervously, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I imagine you didn't, Officer Torres. I've been watching this broadcast for the past 20 minutes, and I have some serious questions about your conduct." Judge Williams walked through the crowd toward the clinic, her expression stern. "I'm particularly interested in why you're treating an obvious case of animal cruelty as a property dispute, and why you're trying to shut down a legal broadcast of public interest." Torres was sweating now. Judge Williams had the authority to end his career with a single phone call. "Your Honor, Mr. Crane is a respected member of the community." "Mr. Crane," Judge Williams interrupted, "is about to be a defendant in my courtroom, along with anyone who's been helping him." She looked directly at Torres when she said it. Inside the storage room, Alex was watching all of this unfold on his live stream comments. Viewers were posting updates about what they could see happening outside the clinic. "Look," Alex said to the German Shepherd, showing him the computer screen. "People are coming to help us." The dog seemed to understand. His tail started wagging for the first time since Crane had arrived. "Alex!" came his father's voice through the door. "Son, are you okay in there?" "We're fine, Dad, but I think we should stay here until the good police arrive." "The good police?" "The ones who aren't friends with Mr. Crane." As if summoned by Alex's words, a new set of sirens approached. These belonged to federal agents, called in by Alex's grandmother's contacts in Washington. Agent Sarah Kim stepped out of the lead vehicle, badge clearly visible, surrounded by a team of agents in tactical gear. She took one look at the situation and immediately understood what was happening. "Officer Torres," she called, "step away from the civilians." Torres turned toward the federal agents, his confidence finally cracking. "Agent Kim, this is a local matter. This is now a federal matter. We have evidence of interstate animal trafficking, organized cruelty, and corruption of local law enforcement." She gestured to one of her agents, who immediately began reading Torres his rights. "You can't arrest me," Torres protested. "I'm a police officer." "You're a police officer who's been taking bribes to protect a criminal operation," Agent Kim replied. That makes you a criminal too. Crane tried to make one last desperate play. Agent Kim, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm simply trying to collect my legally owned property. Mr. Crane, we've been investigating your operation for months. This live stream just gave us the evidence we needed to move forward. She pulled out her phone and showed him the screen. Your entire confession was broadcast live to over 200,000 people, including your admission that you left that dog on the bridge as a training exercise. Crane's face went white as he realized the full scope of his exposure. Alex, Agent Kim called toward the storage room. My name is Agent Kim with the FBI. You're safe now. Can you come out? The storage room door opened slowly, and Alex emerged with the German Shepherd at his side. The dog was still nervous, but he seemed to sense that these new arrivals were different. The crowd outside erupted in cheers when they saw Alex appear safely. The live stream comments exploded with celebration and relief. Alex walked directly to Agent Kim, the German Shepherd matching his pace. Agent Kim, Alex said seriously, this is my friend. His name isn't Bruno. Mr. Crane made that up. What is his name? Alex looked down at the German Shepherd, who looked back at him with those intelligent dark eyes. I think his name is Hope, Alex said, because he never gave up hoping someone would save him. As if responding to his new name, Hope's tail began wagging faster. Agent Kim knelt down to Alex's level. Alex, what you did here today was incredibly brave, but it was also incredibly dangerous. You could have been seriously hurt. I know, Alex said, but sometimes you have to do dangerous things to protect the people you love. He looked at Hope, who pressed closer to his side. Besides, Alex added, I wasn't really alone. I had help. He gestured to the computer, still streaming live, and to the crowd of supporters outside. Sometimes, Alex said with the wisdom of someone much older than 5, the most powerful thing you can do is make sure everyone can see the truth. Agent Kim smiled. You're absolutely right about that. As Crane and his associates were led away in handcuffs, and as Torres was processed for arrest, Alex sat on the clinic floor with Hope, both of them finally able to relax. Dr. Martinez brought them both some water and a blanket, and Marcus and Sophia sat down beside their son. I'm proud of you, Sophia said, hugging Alex tightly, but please don't ever scare us like that again. I'm sorry, Mom, but I couldn't let them take Hope back to that place. Marcus looked at the German Shepherd, who was now completely calm and peaceful. So, his name is Hope now? If that's okay with him. Alex looked at the dog. Do you like that name? Hope responded by placing his head in Alex's lap and closing his eyes contentedly. Judge Williams approached the family, still holding her tablet. Alex, do you realize that your broadcast has been seen by over 500,000 people in the last 2 hours? Alex looked surprised. Really? Really. You've started something important here. People all over the country are talking about animal welfare and police corruption because of what you did today. She knelt down beside him. But more importantly, you saved your friend here, and probably a lot of other animals who won't have to suffer because of Mr. Crane anymore. Alex stroked Hope's fur gently. Will he be able to stay with us? Agent Kim, who had been listening to the conversation, smiled. Mr. Crane's ownership of any animals is now void due to his criminal activities. As far as the law is concerned, Hope is free to choose his own family. Hope opened his eyes and looked at Alex, then at Marcus and Sophia, then back at Alex. His tail thumped once against the floor. I think he's made his choice, Dr. Martinez said. Outside, the crowd was beginning to disperse, but not before many people had taken photos and videos of their own. The story of the 5-year-old boy who took down a criminal empire with a live stream was going to be told and retold for years to come. But for Alex, the most important part wasn't the fame or the attention. It was the warm weight of Hope's head in his lap, and the knowledge that sometimes, if you're brave enough to stand up for what's right, the whole world will stand up with you. Are you ready to go home? Alex asked Hope. The dog's answer was to stand up, stretch, and walk toward the door, looking back to make sure Alex was following. They had saved each other, and now they were ready to start their new life together. 3 weeks later, Alex sat on the front porch of their house, watching Hope chase butterflies in the yard. The German Shepherd had filled out considerably since coming to live with them, his coat now thick and shiny, his eyes bright with contentment. But there were still moments when something would trigger a memory, and hope would press close to Alex, seeking comfort. The story of their rescue had indeed spread around the world. Alex's live stream had been viewed over 2 million times, and the case had sparked a national conversation about animal welfare and police corruption. News crews had camped outside their house for days, and Alex had been invited to appear on talk shows and receive awards from animal rights organizations. But Alex had turned down most of the attention. He was, after all, still just a 5-year-old boy who wanted to play with his dog and help his parents in the garden. The one interview he had agreed to was with a local news station because he wanted to talk about something important that most people had missed in all the excitement about his heroic rescue. There were other animals, Alex had told the reporter seriously. Mr. Crane hurt lots of them, not just Hope, and some of them are still out there, still scared, still needing help. That interview had led to something Alex hadn't expected, a phone call from the state capitol. Agent Kim had visited the family to explain what they'd discovered during their investigation of Crane's operation. The evidence from Alex's livestream, combined with what they'd found on Crane's properties, had revealed a network of illegal animal trafficking that stretched across multiple states. "We've shut down 3 major fighting rings and rescued over 200 animals," Agent Kim had told them. But there are still animals unaccounted for, animals that were sold or traded before we could find them. Alex had listened to this news with the same serious expression he'd worn throughout the entire ordeal. "What happens to them? We're still looking. But it's difficult. Some of them may have been sold to people who don't know their history. Others might be hidden on private properties we haven't discovered yet." That's when Alex had made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "I want to help find them." Agent Kim had smiled gently. "Alex, you've already done more than enough. You should focus on being a kid and enjoying life with Hope." "But I'm good at finding lost animals," Alex had insisted. "Hope told me where to look for him, and I listened. Maybe other animals will tell me things too." At first, everyone had assumed this was just the imagination of a child who'd been through a traumatic experience. But then, strange things started happening. The first incident occurred a week after Crane's arrest. Alex had been playing in the backyard with Hope when he suddenly stopped and walked to the fence that bordered the woods behind their house. "Mom," he had called to Sophia, who was hanging laundry. "There's a cat in the woods. She's hurt and she's scared." Sophia had looked toward the trees but seen nothing. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" "She's by the big oak tree, the one with the broken branch. She's been there for 2 days, but she's too scared to come out." To humor Alex, Sophia had walked to the edge of the woods and called softly. To her amazement, a small calico cat had emerged from behind the oak tree, limping and clearly malnourished. The cat wore a collar with a tag that read, "Property of Crane Holdings." After that, Alex's feelings about lost animals were taken more seriously. Over the next 2 weeks, he had helped locate a border collie hiding in an abandoned barn, 2 horses that had wandered onto a neighbor's property, and a litter of puppies that had been abandoned in a drainage culvert. All of them bore the signs of Crane's operation: microchips with serial numbers instead of names, behavioral indicators of abuse, and that same look of desperate hope that Hope had shown when Alex first found him. Dr. Martinez had started calling Alex the Animal Whisperer, but Alex didn't think of it that way. To him, it was simply a matter of listening carefully and paying attention to things that adults often missed. "Animals talk all the time," he had explained to his parents. "They just don't use words. You have to listen with your heart instead of your ears." Word of Alex's unusual ability had reached the state animal welfare unit, and they had started consulting with him on difficult cases. It was an unprecedented situation, a 5-year-old boy working as an unofficial advisor to law enforcement. But the results spoke for themselves. In 3 weeks, Alex had helped locate 17 animals connected to Crane's network, all of them successfully placed in loving homes after rehabilitation. The work wasn't always easy. Some of the animals Alex found were in terrible condition, both physically and emotionally. Some had been so traumatized that they needed months of careful treatment before they could trust humans again. But Alex never gave up on any of them. He would sit with the most frightened animals for hours, speaking to them in his quiet, serious voice, until they began to understand that not all humans were sources of pain. Hope had become Alex's partner in this work. The German Shepherd seemed to understand that his job was to help other traumatized animals feel safe. He would approach them slowly, calmly, demonstrating through his own relaxed demeanor that the humans nearby could be trusted. It was during one of these rescue missions that Alex discovered something that would change everything again. They had been called to investigate reports of animals being kept on a property outside the county line. The tip had come from a postal worker who had noticed unusual sounds and smells coming from a seemingly abandoned farm. Alex, accompanied by Agent Kim and his parents, had walked the perimeter of the property with Hope at his side. For the first time since they'd started working together, Alex seemed uncertain. "There are animals here," he said slowly. "But something's different." "Different how?" Agent Kim asked. Alex frowned, trying to put his feelings into words. "They're not just scared. They're angry." Hope's behavior confirmed Alex's assessment. The normally calm German Shepherd was agitated, his hackles raised, his attention focused on a large barn in the center of the property. "There's something else," Alex said. "Someone's here, someone who's supposed to be gone." Agent Kim immediately called for backup, but before they could decide how to proceed, the barn doors opened. Robert Crane stepped out into the sunlight. He should have been in federal custody, awaiting trial. But here he was, apparently free, and operating another illegal facility. "Well, well," Crane said, his voice carrying across the farmyard. "If it isn't my young nemesis and his faithful hound." Agent Kim was already on her radio, calling for immediate assistance, but Crane seemed unconcerned about the authorities. "How are you here?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the shock of seeing the man who had tried to hurt them. "Money, my boy. Money and connections. Did you really think one live stream would be enough to stop an operation this large?" Crane gestured toward the barn behind him. "I have clients all over the world, people who pay very well for my services. A temporary setback was always possible, but this business is far too profitable to simply abandon." Agent Kim stepped forward, her hand on her weapon. "Mr. Crane, you're supposed to be in federal custody." "I was released on bail pending trial. Amazing what a good lawyer can accomplish." Crane's smile was as cold as winter. "And now I'm conducting legitimate business on private property." "There's nothing legitimate about what you do," Alex said firmly. But that's where you're wrong, young Alex. You see, I've learned from our previous encounter. Everything I do here is technically legal. I've found loopholes." As if to demonstrate his point, Crane gestured toward the barn. Several people in business attire emerged, looking like ordinary customers. "These are legitimate buyers," Crane announced. "People purchasing animals for legal purposes, hunting, security, breeding. What they do with the animals after they leave my property is entirely their business." Alex felt something cold settle in his stomach. Crane had found a way to continue his operation while staying just within the bounds of the law. But then Hope did something unexpected. The German Shepherd walked directly toward the barn, ignoring Crane completely. His body language wasn't aggressive or fearful. It was purposeful. "Hope, come back," Alex called, but the dog continued forward. Hope stopped at the barn entrance and let out that same mournful howl they had heard at the clinic 3 weeks ago. But this time, the response was immediate and overwhelming. From inside the barn came an answering chorus of howls, barks, and cries. Not just from dogs, but from cats, horses, and other animals Alex couldn't immediately identify. But there was something else in those sounds, something that made Alex's heart race with excitement rather than fear. "They're not scared," Alex said, suddenly understanding. "They're ready." "Ready for what?" Agent Kim asked. Alex looked at Hope, who was now standing at the barn entrance like a general preparing to address his troops. "They're ready to choose," Alex said, "just like Hope chose us." What happened next would be talked about for years afterward. As if responding to some signal only they could hear, animals began emerging from the barn, not running in panic, not cowering in fear, but walking with dignity and purpose. They formed a loose circle around Crane and his customers, effectively trapping them in the farmyard. The animals' message was clear. They were no longer property to be bought and sold. Crane tried to maintain control of the situation. "These animals are legally purchased. You can't interfere with a legitimate business transaction." But his voice was shaking, and his customers were backing away nervously as more and more animals continued to emerge from the barn. Alex walked into the circle, Hope beside him, and looked directly at Crane. "Mr. Crane," he said in that serious 5-year-old voice, You made a mistake. What mistake? You thought animals were things, but they're not things. They're friends, and friends protect each other. As if to prove Alex's point, a large German shepherd that looked remarkably like Hope stepped forward from the group of animals. Then another, and another. "My breeding stock," Crane whispered, realizing what was happening. These weren't just random rescued animals. These were Hope's family, his parents, his siblings, his own offspring. All of them had been trained for fighting, but all of them remembered what it meant to be part of a pack, and Hope was their leader. "You see," Alex explained to Crane, "Hope wasn't just any dog. He was special. That's why you picked him for your training exercise on the bridge. But you didn't understand that making him special also made him dangerous to you." The circle of animals tightened around Crane and his customers. Not threatening, but unmistakably determined. Agent Kim, who had been watching this unfold in amazement, finally found her voice. "Mr. Crane, I think it's time for you to come with us." But Crane made one last desperate attempt to regain control. He pulled out a device that looked like a remote control and pressed a button. The device was designed to emit a high-frequency sound that would send trained animals cowering in fear and submission. It was one of the tools Crane had used to maintain control over his victims. For a moment, some of the animals flinched, but then Hope stepped forward and did something that made everyone's hearts stop. He sat down, not in submission, but in peaceful defiance. And one by one, every other animal in the circle followed his example. They were no longer afraid of Crane's tools of control. They had chosen freedom, and no amount of conditioning could change that choice. Crane stared at the circle of sitting animals, his device useless in his hand, and finally understood that his empire was truly over. When the backup agents arrived, they found Crane and his customers surrounded by over 40 animals, all sitting peacefully but unmistakably guarding their former captors. "How do we even write this report?" one of the agents asked. Alex looked up at Agent Kim with a smile. "Maybe you could say that the animals decided to arrest him themselves." As Crane was led away in handcuffs for the second and final time, Alex knelt down and hugged Hope tightly. "You did it," he whispered. "You saved all of them." Hope licked Alex's face and wagged his tail, but his work wasn't done yet. One by one, the other animals approached Alex and Hope, as if seeking permission or guidance. "What happens to them now?" Alex asked Agent Kim. "Well, they'll need homes, medical care. Some of them might need months of rehabilitation." Alex looked around at the circle of animals, all of them watching him with hope in their eyes. "I know some people who might help," he said thoughtfully. Over the next few months, Alex's network of animal lovers and advocates grew into something remarkable. Every animal from Crane's final operation found a loving home, and many of their new families stayed in touch with Alex and Hope. The story of the boy who brought down an animal trafficking ring became more than just a viral video. It became a movement. Animal welfare laws were strengthened, police corruption investigations were launched in multiple states, and a new generation of young people became inspired to stand up for those who couldn't speak for themselves. But for Alex, the most important outcome was much simpler. Every evening, he would sit on his front porch with Hope at his side, watching the sunset and knowing that, somewhere out there, animals who had once known only fear and pain were now loved and safe. "Do you think we'll find more lost animals?" Alex would ask Hope. Hope's answer was always the same, a gentle wag of his tail and a peaceful sigh, as if to say, "We'll find whoever needs finding." Because sometimes, the most powerful force in the world isn't money or violence or control. Sometimes it's just a 5-year-old boy and his dog willing to listen when others are too busy to hear, and brave enough to act when others are too afraid to move. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. Thank you for listening to Alex and Hope's incredible story. If their courage inspired you, like it's inspired millions of others around the world, please subscribe to our channel for more amazing true stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that even the smallest voice can make the biggest difference.